guys, it's Kevin again, and Merry Christmas to all of you. Hope you guys are having a wonderful holiday so far. So, if you guys notice, I haven't done a catch-up review in a minute. It's been a long time since I've done one. I've had multiple opportunities to do one this year, and I just haven't had the time to. So, I figured that since there are about a half a dozen Christmas films, so many Christmas films that came out this year, besides Last Christmas, which I've already reviewed, I would take the time to review all of these Christmas films that I've watched, give you guys my opinion of them, if they're worth watching, all that kind of stuff, if they work as a Christmas movie. But like I said, there's a lot of different ones that came out, so we're just going to get right into it. Alright, so the first one I'm going to be talking about is actually going to be Black Christmas. This was a film that I saw a couple weeks ago. I've been waiting to do a huge review, a longer review for, but I just didn't have the time to, so I figured, you know what, I'll just throw it in here. Yeah, this movie fucking sucks. It's basically what I expected it to be. But here's the thing, as a Christmas film, I mean, I guess it works. It has, Christmas things that you can enjoy and things like that. That's not the problem with this movie. The problem with this movie is that it's just a message film. That's all it really is. And what I mean by that is that the entire film is just a message. There really isn't much of a story here. We have our main character that was, in fact, sexually abused, a couple months back and things like that. But we don't have any other connection to her besides that. We don't know what led to this. We don't really know much of anything. We just know that it's happened. And look, is it tragic that it happened? Absolutely. Any sort of sexual assault, it's devastating, especially considering that, very rarely does the person that assaulted that person get their needed, get their needed punishment for it, get their needed repercussions for what they did. But that rarely ever happens, unfortunately. So yes, it is very devastating that way. It's just the way this film handles it is really, really dumb. They basically just make you say, okay, we're going to care about this character just because of the fact that she was sexually assaulted. There's really no other reason to care about her. And so, besides that, there's no other character in this movie. The other girls, I did not give a shit about. I found them all really annoying and cliche. And the thing is, they keep going on about all of these feminist things, but yet they keep talking about their bodies. They keep talking about having sex. I mean, you can't have it both ways. Like, if you're trying to sell this message of, sexual assault and things like that, why are you just having these girls, like, whore themselves around and things like that? Like, I don't really understand what they were trying to do there. It honestly was, I think, pretty offensive in that way, because on one hand, you're saying that this is wrong, and it's very pandering as well. Like, it's very much forced down your throat. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, it should be, forceful and things like that. And look, I've seen films that have handled it really well. I think there are a lot of films that have covered sexual assault very well. I do not at all think this is the film that was supposed to do it, because that really, by doing this, makes it not work at all as a slasher film. Remember what everyone was talking about where, oh, the movie is now PG-13, that's going to ruin it? Yep, they were absolutely correct. Almost every single kill in this movie, it cuts away from almost immediately. There's barely any blood here. I mean, it's just such a tame film. It feels so lazy in that way. And again, I would not have a problem if they would have given you some solid character, but all they give you is just this message, and I just don't think it's handled very well at all, and it's so in your face towards the end of this movie. Where it goes in the third act is fucking ridiculous. I couldn't believe what they were actually doing here. I couldn't believe what they were actually trying to send a message of. If you want to see a film that handles satanic rituals well, but also has social commentary, watch Ready or Not. That's the perfect example of a film that handles that stuff well. I already reviewed that film earlier this year. I have not heard as many people talk about it, but it's one that I really do love, and I think that's a perfect example to handle it. This, on the other hand, felt like it was doing that as a distraction. It was doing it so you felt like the movie was better than it was. Like, oh, the movie has this great message of sexual assault. That means it's a great movie. No, it's not. Stop doing that. Stop shoving in, social and topical messages into movies, not because of the story, but just because you want people to credit the film more. It doesn't do much of anything if you don't handle it well. It has no place in this movie, and it's literally the entire movie. It just, and again, look, I'll say this, Imogen Poots is really good. She's a very good actress. I think she did a good job. None of the other girls really annoyed me acting-wise. Like, I thought they were annoying, but acting-wise, I thought they were all kind of fine. Like, nobody I thought was all that bad. I will say, Cary Elwes, who I normally really do like, I thought was terrible here. I couldn't stand him in this movie. And it was so obvious from the first scene where his character ends up going. I thought he was really overdoing it here, and I was not a fan of him very much at all. There's a really forced, love, like, not necessarily love interest, but, like, kind of a guy that clearly Imogen Poots' character takes an interest in, Landon. I thought that his whole character just made no sense to me. I could not tell where they were trying to go with him. It just really didn't work. And there is a part with him at the end of the movie that legitimately makes no sense. There's such a huge logical issue in that way, and there's a lot of things like that here. This is just overall a really badly made film. Again, it relies so hard on its message that it really fails to do anything else. It doesn't deliver a solid story. It doesn't have really good characters. The scares are ridiculously, rushed and things like that. They're really glossed over. It just overall is a definition of a really, really awful horror film that is easily one of the worst of the year. Definite D for Black Christmas. It's actually kind of worse than I thought it was going to be honest with you. I was not expecting this message to be forced on me the way it was, and I think that ultimately is what ruined the entire film, is that they focused so much on that. Everything else was very much shoved to the wayside, and it very much does show here. Feast of the Seven Fishes is a film that I don't think many people have heard about, and I kind of wish that wasn't the case, because I found this film to be really charming. Now look, is it a perfect film? No. There definitely are some things that are a bit underwritten for sure, which I'll get into, but overall, I really enjoyed this one. I thought that the chemistry between Skylar Gazzondo and Madison Eisman I thought was really strong. I thought those two worked off each other quite well, and it was just really cool to see a different culture, how they experience, Christmas, this Italian family, and them having this whole, feast of all of these, how this is a huge, like, tradition for them and things like that. I thought they did a really good job with it. I thought that was something that was definitely really interesting. I thought they'd had some really funny moments throughout the film, and Skylar Gazzondo's arc overall I thought was actually pretty solid, where he is clearly still having feelings for this girl. He's trying to get over her and things like that, and he's kind of at first using Madison Eisman in that way. And I thought overall that was kind of a solid arc, but that also leads me to my biggest problem with the film, is that it feels like Madison Eisman as a character, it was just here to be a plot device. And the problem is that for the first, I want to say, like, hour and a half of this movie, she's essentially the main character. Like, the first hour or so, she basically is the main character here, and there really isn't much for her to do after a while, other than just, look happy and look excited to see this family eating, and laugh at them, and laugh at their jokes and things like that, and just enjoy yourself. There isn't really much else for her to do, and the ending especially felt very much like a cop-out. You think for a while this is going to go in a direction with these two ending up together. It really doesn't, and that was a bit disappointing for me for sure. Again, fun movie. I enjoyed it. I think as a Christmas film, it's one that is a nice, throwaway Christmas movie that it definitely has some really charming moments. It's got some really good performances in there. I think it explores, like I said, a different side of Christmas culture that we haven't really seen before. But overall, I still really did enjoy it. I think that it could have definitely been better. I think there were definitely some things that were a bit underwritten that did kind of ruin the film for me. But overall, I enjoyed it enough to where I can give it a B minus. A pretty decent one overall. And honestly, if there are a lot of Christmas films that I'm going to review here that aren't really that great, this is definitely one of the better ones. This is one where, if you haven't seen it, I honestly would recommend checking it out, and I think is overall pretty entertaining for the most part. Noelle was a film that I was very much dreading, and it's not nearly as bad as I was really expecting. I think there's actually something kind of charming about it, and a lot of that is due to Anna Kendrick, who I think is perfectly casted here. You can tell she's having a lot of fun in this role. She's doing everything she can to really make this role, I think, as energetic and fun as it really is, and I think she definitely does do a really good job here. Bill Hader is also fantastic, as he's been in a lot of stuff lately. I mean, he's been having quite the streak, and he gives another really strong performance here. I think he has some of the funniest moments in the entire movie, especially when you get into the stuff he's doing to become the next Santa Claus and things like that, all these like rituals and things like that. It's a lot of fun. They do a lot of great stuff with that. I really like Shirley MacLaine as well. I thought she had some really fun moments in this movie. I will say the visual effects are definitely really bad here. There's a lot of visual effects that they don't look the greatest. It looks very cheap in that way, and I don't think they did a really good job with that. I also will say for a while I wasn't really laughing a lot. It was more of just I was enjoying what I was seeing, but the jokes themselves I think were kind of hit or miss for me at first. I think as the movie went on, it definitely got funnier, but it was kind of hit and miss for me for a while. And that did bring the film down a bit. And also, there is this other character that Anna Kendrick becomes entangled with. He is this cop of sorts, and I just didn't really care about his story. They do a lot to really get you on board, but I just didn't find it nearly as interesting as everything else that was going on. Also, there's a character played by Billy Eichner in this movie that I really did not see the purpose of. He's like this journalist that's like investigating like the North Pole and things like that, and I didn't get what they were trying to do with him. He felt very out of place in this movie, and it just felt very inconsequential in that way. I also will say, for the people who were complaining that this film was just going to be like a film being about, feminists and things like that, that's not really what they're doing. It's very much about the message of, anyone can really be Santa. I think that's a really good message for sure. It's definitely a bit, it's definitely a bit surface level, but I think it definitely does what it needs to do pretty well. I enjoyed this one for the most part. I was overall enjoying it. Is it one that I'd watch like all the time? No, but for what it is, I actually think it did a pretty good job. And I think I liked it enough to give it a B minus. Again, there's some things that definitely don't work, visual effects, some of the characters, but Kendrick and Hader, I think, carry it so well, especially Kendrick, who really carries it on her sleeve. Hader's not in it quite as much as you'd think, but I think overall they did enough here that I think really did make this work at the end of the day. Klaus is the one that everyone seems to be talking about. I've heard so many people talk about how this movie's gonna be an instant classic and things like that. And look, I will say, in an age where we don't typically get really good Christmas movies, this is super refreshing. I really do love this one quite a bit. I think they did a lot of stuff here to really make this work, and it's definitely the strongest of the Christmas movies I'm talking about. The story itself, I think, is really well done. I love the idea that we are seeing a sort of alternate version of Santa Claus's origin story, because there's been so many that have been told. You think that it would be, they would run out of ideas at this point, but they still find ways to keep it interesting and fresh. This Santa is much different from the others we've seen. He's someone who's very depressed. He's very down in the dumps. He doesn't believe that he could be Santa Claus in that way. He has a very traumatic past, and I think J.K. Simmons was just magnificent in this role. And look, I knew that he was perfect casting the moment that he was announced, but he is even better than I was expecting. I thought that he did such a great job commanding this role. I thought that he had just such a charm to him, but he also felt like a real person. It didn't feel like a mythical being in that way. And that's something I think they did a really good job with, is that they really made this version of Santa Claus, or Klaus as he's called at first, and really make him feel like a real person. They did a really good job with that, and then contrasting that to Jason Schwartzman's character, who I wasn't really that big of a fan of at first, but then you kind of realize that's the point. He's someone who is very selfish. He doesn't really think of others, but he kind of learns to throughout the movie, and you realize just how great of a screenplay this really is. I think these two have a really great rapport to them. You really do care about their relationship, and the way that they really do bring out the best in each other. I think is definitely a huge highlight in this film for sure. It's easily one of my favorite things about this film. I think they did a really great job with that here, and there's just a lot to really love about this one. The 2D animation is fantastic to behold. It's so beautiful and just whimsical, and it really gives you a very warm feeling that I think a 3D animated film just would not be able to convey. I'm so happy that we got a 2D animated film that's not anime or something like that in 2019. I think that's really cool to see, and it really does elevate this film for me. I think there's a lot to really love there. I really love the score. Again, it's very whimsical and things like that. The film is very funny. There's a lot of really funny moments in this film. So yeah, there's a lot to really love about it. The only thing that does bring this film down for me are the antagonists here. I get that there's this conflict. I get that we have this sort of Romeo and Juliet type storyline where, like, we have these two feuding families, and that conflates with how Santa Claus is, and they want to try to bring him down and things like that. But it just feels so divorced from this movie. Every time they come back to it, I felt like I was watching a different film. And I'm not saying that, like, Joan Cusack and people like that did a bad job or anything, because they did the best with what they had. I just never really felt as invested as I was when it was our two lead characters. I thought that was inherently more interesting, what was going on there. I thought that that had a lot more of a thematic edge to it, and this just felt a little bit more generic. Again, I think they did a better job than I was expecting with them fleshing out all these characters. Like I said, even the villains feel well fleshed out to me, but I just needed a little bit more there. I think they could have definitely done more with some of those characters. But again, when you have a character like Klaus or Jesper, our main character, or even Margu, this little Sami girl who speaks in a different language throughout the she's Samoan. She speaks in a different language throughout the entire movie. Jesper can't even tell what she's saying. There's just something so charming about her. There's something so there's something about her that really makes you feel warm inside. It makes you feel like a kid again in that way. And those are the best kind of Christmas films. There's those films that can give you that sense of warmth, can give you that sense of just that good feeling. And I think that's something that Klaus does incredibly well. I think it's really great to see an animated film that is doing a lot more than just cheap, jokes and trying to like pander to kids. No, this is actually trying to tell a really good story. It's actually has a really great message in there, I think, about the importance of, selflessness and the importance of hope and the importance of giving. And these are messages we've seen before, but this film finds a way to do something different with it. And I really did love this one a lot. Klaus is a very high B plus for me. It's easily the best of the ones I'm talking about, and very much deserves all the hype it's gotten. Really great stuff for sure. Let It Snow is another film that really did surprise me, because most of these sort of like ensemble romance type films I usually either really dislike or I fucking hate them. There usually is no other sort of middle ground for me. There's never a point where, I've actually liked one of these. But this one I actually found kind of decent. I thought they actually did a good job with not making every single story so predictable. Now, some of them, yeah, they're really cheesy. Some of them don't really work at all. But some of them, like, say, our main story here with Shamik Moore and Isabella Marquette, I thought was really well done. Or, the one going on with the two, with the lesbian couple, I thought that was really strong as well. There's a lot of stories here that I actually really did enjoy, and a lot of that's due to the cast. Everyone's doing a really good job. Everyone's putting their best into this. I didn't really feel like there was anyone that was half-assing it, and that's not usually something you can say for these ensemble type films. It always seems like there's like one person that's doing a great job and everyone else just kind of sucks. Here, everyone was really doing a good job, and I don't really feel like they wasted anyone either. Everyone got their fair share in this movie, and that's something else that very much did surprise me. However, the best arc easily for me was the one going on with Odeya Rush in this movie. I thought her arc was fantastic. Starts off and she's like this very sort of selfish girl, but she really goes through a really big transformation. A lot of that's due to this character that Joan Cusack plays that she happens upon, who I got a big laugh out of. I thought this was a really funny character, and Cusack really embraced it for sure. Yet another Joan Cusack film, but a character I enjoyed a lot more than the one she played in Klaus. And here, I just thought that they did a really good job with getting us interested in everyone. And that storyline in particular, I really found myself compelled by. I actually really liked where they ended up going with it, and it ended up being my favorite storyline in the entire film. And considering that I enjoyed even one of them, is a shock to me. But unlike something like, say, The Last Summer, where there was one story that was really great and everything else kind of sucked, most of these stories I thought were actually pretty good. The one with Kiernan Shipka and Mitchell Hope, I wasn't a huge fan of. I thought that one was pretty messy. I didn't really get what they were trying to do with that one. It just, the way that whole one turned out, that one I wasn't really that big of a fan of. But all the other stories going on here, like I said, I wasn't bothered by. I liked where they end up taking them. Are there some things that are insanely predictable? Absolutely. Are there some things that feel very cliche? Definitely, but for what it is, I actually think it worked. I actually was entertained by this film. I didn't find myself bored. I didn't find myself annoyed. And overall, I can say that I, for the most part, really did enjoy Let It Snow. So I think I can give this one a B minus as well. It's not one I highly recommend, but it's much better than what it could have been. And that's something else that I can very much give it, especially due to how committed the cast really was here. Holiday in the Wind, on the other hand, is the definition of a run-of-the-mill, mediocre Christmas movie. There's really not much to say about this one at all. Look, I know I've said this before, but Netflix is one of those companies that fluctuates from films that are Oscar contenders to basically wannabe Hallmark films, and that's exactly what this feels like. This feels like a movie that I would be forced to watch via, via 22 Tiger Dude. He would force me to watch this movie because it's a Hallmark film, and we'd watch it together. And because he does that with every single season, we end up doing that together. And it very much felt like one of those because this movie is so insanely cheesy. It's so insanely predictable, and I just did not give a fuck about any of it. I especially hated how the first 15 minutes were. I mean, they really zoomed through this whole thing with Kristen Davis and her husband just like straight up divorcing her. Like, it was really badly put together. After that, the film just got boring. Like, I wouldn't say it was bad, it just got boring for me. Kristen Davis and Rob Lowe, they're fine together. I wouldn't say they didn't have chemistry because they worked fine. They were doing a good job, but overall, this film really didn't do much for me. And as a Christmas film, it really didn't do much either. It cares more about this message about saving wildlife, which I think is important. I do think that is an important message. But again, it's another one of those movies where it feels like they're trying to use that message as a crutch to get you to ignore how boring the story is. I mean, the whole thing going on with her son, I just didn't really care about. I just found this movie very boring. I really don't have much to say about it. It isn't even really that much of a Christmas film aside from a few references. It just takes place during Christmas. So, yeah, straight down the middle for me. C for this one. It's not one that I was like insanely bored by, but it's one that I just was kind of like whatever towards. I really have, it's definitely the most whatever of the ones I'm talking about, and I really did not like it much at all. Holiday Rush, though, is a giant piece of shit. I really, really hated this one. And look, I'll get my positives right off the bat. Romany Malco is really fun in this film. He's doing a good job, I think, of trying to keep you invested in what's going on. But the film itself is really dumb. And a lot of that's due to the family here. This family is just insufferable. I mean, every single one of his kids I found so annoying. I found them so needy and just cliche. I just couldn't stand any of them. I also thought that their acting was pretty horrifically bad. I just didn't like any of the kids here. I thought they were all just really annoying and they just were not doing it for me at all. And so that really didn't work. And the fact they started to get more of a focus really did bother me. What they end up doing with his wife that has passed, I thought was very heavy-handed. I thought it was sweet at first, but then it just became very heavy-handed and things like that. Especially all the stuff going on with his son, I thought was so stupid. I hated what was going on there. Our main character himself, I didn't really care about all that much. He's like this disc jockey who's very much a workaholic, and he focuses more more on himself than he does his family, and like we've seen this 1,000 times before. I didn't think that was very well done. It was a very forced love story between him and Sonequa Martin Green's character, and I did not see any chemistry between these two. Aside, unlike Holiday in the Wild, where I did sense some chemistry, I didn't see any chemistry between these two. I did not think they worked very well together at all. The film is also insanely unfunny. There's only one moment that made me laugh, and it's because it was unintentionally funny. That's the only moment I laughed in this movie. Other than that, I found this film to be really bad. I really could not stand this one. I found it very annoying. I found the jokes to be that really weren't landing for me at all, and it's definitely one of the worst that I'm talking about. I really can't recommend this one at all. D+ for Holiday Rush. It doesn't get, it's not one of the worst ever because of Romany Malco. He does keep it at least somewhat watchable, but it's definitely it's definitely on the badder side of things for sure. It's definitely the worst of the Netflix Christmas films this year. All right, and the final one I'm going to be talking about here is the new Vanessa Hudgens Christmas film, The Night Before Christmas. And look, I'll say right off the bat, this is not as bad as The Princess Switch. It's not nearly as obnoxious. It's not nearly as annoying as that film is, but it still has a lot of things that are really dumb. The plot of this movie is your basic fish out of water thing, which we even saw in things like other films this list. Noelle is literally a fish out of water story as well. It's just the way it's done in this film is really stupid. I really thought that the premise of it just seems so like fan fictiony to me. I did not buy into this at all. Vanessa Hudgens, for the most part, does a good job. For the first half of the film, she sounded really bored, but I think she eventually settled in there. The two actors, I mean, they're doing a good job. They're doing the best with what they have, but the humor here is really bad. It's just a lot of just, oh, I don't know what this device is, and oh, I don't know how this works, and it just really didn't work for me. The film is also has a massive tonal issue. When it's in the medieval times, it has this really like epic feel to it, and then when it's in the modern day setting, it feels like a comedy, and I think that they should not have taken the medieval stuff as seriously as they did because it just created this huge tonal inconsistency for me. I just really didn't like this one at all. Again, I didn't think it was as bad as it could have been, but I found the story to be really boring. The whole idea of this premise, like I said, I think is laughably stupid. The way that Vanessa Hudgens went about this whole thing as well, I thought was really dumb, and just in general, I think this was better than I thought it was going to be, but it's still a really stupid film. I will say this, at least there was an annoying kid. There always is in one of those movies, and there's not here, so there's that, but in general, I found this one to be really just whatever. It's one that I watched and I forgot about it, and I don't have a lot to say about it because of it. So it's not as bad as Princess Switch, but it's still not a good film. So you're getting there, Vanessa, but you definitely still not preferably what I'd want her to do. I think that she definitely has a lot more talent than this, but I can say this, it's certainly going to be better than whatever the Princess Switch sequel next year is going to be, so yay! And with that, guys, that's it. Those are all the Christmas films that I'm going to be reviewing. I know there was a lot to get through, but like I said, there was an absorbent amount of Christmas films that came out this year, and I figured that I had to talk about all of them at least as much as I possibly could. Either way, guys, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought of any of these films. Like I said, hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas. Happy holidays, wherever you guys end up celebrating. Hope you guys are really enjoying yourself around this time of year. Guys, I have a ton of videos coming out. We are at that point of the year where it's very much crunch time. I have been watching tons of movies lately, and I got a lot of stuff coming out for you guys, so definitely look forward to that. Also, tomorrow is a big day for me because I'm going to be going down back to I already talked about my Mandalorian review, but if you guys didn't see it, I'm going back down to Boston to visit my good friend Kane LaPlante. We're going to be seeing a bunch of movies together, so a lot of reviews coming out there as well, so definitely look forward to that. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.